Unless you're traveling somewhere local or visiting a highly walkable city like New York, you're probably going to need to rent a car on your next trip. That brings up an important question. Should you stick with a traditional rental car company like Enterprise, Hertz, Dollar, or should you use a platform called Turo? For those unfamiliar, Turo is essentially the Airbnb of cars. Instead of renting from a corporate fleet, you're renting directly from individual car owners through a peer to peer marketplace. You browse available vehicles nearby, book the exact car you see in the listing, and coordinate pickup and delivery directly with the host. I've taken 15 trips using Turo since 2016, so I've seen firsthand how the platform has evolved over the last decade. At the same time, I've also rented from traditional rental agencies dozens of times across the country. So today, I'm breaking down the practical pros and cons of Turo versus traditional rental car companies. And stick around until the end, where I'll reveal my final verdict on which option is actually worth your money. The most immediate benefit of Turo is convenience. On a recent trip through Cincinnati Northern Kentucky International Airport, the dollar car rental was right off the terminal, which was great, but with only one employee working, I waited over 20 minutes just to reach the front of the line. With Turo, you can bypass all of that. Most airport pickups involve walking straight to a designated parking lot or garage, grabbing the keys from a lockbox on the window, and driving right off. There's no counter, no upsells, basically no waiting. Another pro in Turo's favor is that sometimes it can be cheaper upfront, but as I'll explain later, that can be also a little bit deceiving. Traditional car rental companies appear to offer plenty of brand choices, but that market is far more concentrated than it looks. Most major brands are owned by just three holding companies. Like Enterprise actually holds National and Alamo, Hertz owns Dollar and Thrifty, Avis owns Budget. So, because a handful of these parent corporations control the majority of the fleet, pricing across the traditional brands tends to be fairly tight and consistent. Turo, on the other hand, there's just a lot more price competition because there are thousands of independent hosts in some of the larger cities, and they're all competing against one another. They all see each other's pricing, and that competition can drive down the base daily rates. Another pro of using Turo is that the platform is just going to have a much wider selection of vehicles to choose from. With traditional car rental companies, sometimes they have a wide fleet, but you're not going to find a niche vehicle like a sports car or even certain electric vehicles. They'll cover electric vehicles like a Tesla or a Kia Niro, but certainly not something like a Rivian. If you look at the top left bar, you'll notice that you can actually filter on the make. You notice there's BMWs, Bentleys. If you scroll down a little bit further, you'll see that there's Maseratis, McLarens, and of course these are going to be very expensive. I mean, for a 2.5 day rental, $2,000 for a McLaren is definitely up there. But again, if you want to rent that type of car, your Avis or Dollar is just not going to have it for you. And then, as I mentioned previously, maybe you're not into sports cars, but you have a particular make in mind. For me, I'm always interested in looking at these Rivian vehicles. So if you scroll down, you'll see that Rivian comes up close to the bottom. And if you were to select it at LAX, you have a bunch of R1Ss and R1Ts available for rent. All right, so that wraps up the pros, but in my experience, this is where Turo's advantages start to taper off, and there are some pretty serious cons, which probably will prevent me from using the platform too often in the future. I did mention that Turo is sometimes cheaper, but not always, and this partly comes down to insurance. So when you rent from a traditional car company like an Avis or Enterprise, your existing personal auto insurance policy through Geico, Progressive, etc., they typically extend coverage to your rental vehicle at no additional charge. However, car insurance companies and even credit card insurers view Turo as a peer to peer vehicle sharing platform rather than a commercial rental agency. And that matters because these personal insurance policies often explicitly exclude Turo bookings. So, to avoid full personal liability for damages or medical costs, you're strongly incentivized to purchase a Turo protection plan. And Turo offers three primary guest protection tiers in the US. The first is its premier plan. This is the most expensive. If there's any damage, there's a $0 deductible. The next one is the standard plan, which most people use when they book. That has a deductible of $500. And then the minimum plan raises the deductible to $3,000, which you basically have to total the vehicle in order for the insurance to actually work in your favor. And then, of course, you can decline coverage, but as I mentioned before, that can be a little bit risky because your personal insurance policy is very unlikely going to carry over. So, whatever damages you incur, that's on you completely out of pocket. The other con is Turo vehicles just tend to be way older. Unlike traditional rental fleets, which routinely sell off vehicles before they reach 40 or 50,000 miles, in my experience, Turo features a super wide spectrum of cars. The good thing, if you look at the website, is you can filter on vehicles based on their model year. I don't think there's a way to do it based on miles, but for example, if I want to only look at model years from 2023 onwards, then chances are none of these vehicles that you see on the page are probably going to have total mileage above 50,000 unless these cars are being rented out like 20,000 miles per year, which is definitely possible. But, if I were to click on this Volkswagen Jetta, for example, I'm going to guess it probably has under 15,000 miles. The other thing worth noting, other than the age of the vehicle, is you're going to have sometimes a cap on the number of miles you can drive. For this hypothetical listing, it's basically a 3-day rental, so they're capping me at 200 miles per day, which, depending on your trip, can be a little bit restrictive. That does differ from a traditional car rental company where basically universally there's unlimited mileage. And that's not to say that you can't find a car in Turo without unlimited mileage. In fact, there is a filter that allows you, if you scroll down a little bit further here, you can put this at 500 miles per day, which effectively is unlimited. So if you click on this Tesla Model X, for example, you scroll down, it says unlimited here. The problem is, based on how pricing works, owners that give you unlimited miles know you're going to drive more and they're going to jack up the rental price versus you just don't have that for a traditional rental car company. So definitely keep this distance included in mind. The other disadvantage is stricter cancellation rules. So with traditional car rental companies, you can typically book a vehicle and cancel maybe 24 to 48 hours in advance without any financial penalty. Turo, on the other hand, has changed their policy in recent years, so I have to change this date because I actually have a car rental booked at this time. Um, but let's hypothetically say I want it for these dates. And then if you go on the checkout page, you'll notice here there's two booking rates, one of which is non-refundable. It's kind of like the airline model where you can cancel for free up to 24 hours. But the problem is if you want it fully refundable until a day before the trip starts, you do have to pay somewhat of a hefty premium. This is what, like $50 increase from $6.95. It's not 10% more, but it's more than 5% more. It's kind of an annoying fee. And then the other disadvantage I'll highlight is if you look at the itemized cost breakdown, a lot of these fees add up a ton, right? So like imagine I wanted it refundable. So you have your minimum protection, which is the insurance plan that Turo offers that gives you a $3,000 deductible. Again, pretty bad deductible. That's going to jack up the price by $50. You're going to have sales tax, though arguably in a traditional car rental company, they'll provide sales tax as well. And then you'll just have these fees like a license recovery fee, which essentially is Turo's share of the profits or the revenues from this booking. All right, so in conclusion, after 10 years of being on the Turo platform, for me, traditional car rental companies went out on most of the dimensions of comparison. The peace of mind and the flexibility they offer just simply outweighs the advantages of Turo. So when you rent from a traditional agency, you get that universal unlimited mileage, your personal auto insurance automatically carries over, and you don't have to pay extra just to ensure your reservation is refundable if your travel plans change. So while Turo does have its perks, like skipping the rental counter line, or maybe you want to test drive a specific maker model, to me personally, those advantages are just too niche and too small to make me want to rely on the platform for regular travel. So when I'm on a trip, I want predictable, hassle-free transportation, and for overall value, simplicity, and flexibility, traditional rental companies are my way to go. And the last con, not everyone's going to care about, but sometimes you get lucky with a traditional car rental company where you show up for a car and you're lucky and they give you an upgrade. This is often because the car company wants to generate some goodwill. They just have an empty car sitting on the lot, and maybe you were hoping for an SUV, but you were on a budget, so you booked a compact car and you show up and they give you the SUV for no added charge. Because Turo, you're booking directly with the rental host, that's basically impossible. The car you get is the car you get. I will also say that on some occasions, these hosts will actually cancel on you pretty last minute, maybe because they actually use that car to get to work and they realize they had to get to work that day unexpectedly. So you're kind of just out of luck in those situations, and unfortunately, you would be scrambling. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, then drop a like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.